Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, and cloud is the future of technology. Byron, Deeter, partner of Bessemer Venture Partners, is here to discuss how it could penetrate nearly all enterprise software in just a few years. Byron, welcome to Trade Talks. It's great to have you with us.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you.
All right, now provide us some background on mCloud. What is the index and why did you create it?
You bet. So listed as mCloud, the BVP Nasdaq Emerging Cloud Index is the next generation of cloud computing. It's designed to track the performance of the emerging cloud companies, primarily involved in the cloud revolution, both from a business model and a technology model. BVP began tracking these companies back in 2011. They included the cloud-based business models that were really starting to drive this hypergrowth movement and that were newly public companies at the time. The arc of this performance index has steadily increased, and you can see the steady growth even as recently during this pandemic, in stark contrast to the S&P.
Now, why have cloud stocks been so resilient during the pandemic, and why does BVP believe cloud is the future of technology?
So I'll give you the short-term answer and the long-term answer. The short-term answer is that the pandemic has actually accelerated cloud adoption. Already 94% of enterprises were using at least one cloud solution. But what they found is when you go to a work from home model, the on-prem solutions don't work or don't work nearly as well. And so companies that were experimenting with cloud models are starting to dabble in them, which is the vast majority of all businesses out there, found that cloud was that bridge to business continuity and a work from home world. Now, medium and long term, we'll say that this is where the conviction is really strong and what the acceleration of the trend is happening, but this is an entire replatforming of the industry. We now live in a cloud-first world, and by 2025, we expect that over 50% of enterprise software will have flipped to cloud computing, and that cloud will power over 75% of all of software by 2030. What you've seen is this quick rebound now in the cloud sector, powered by mCloud. Going back, since February 2020, really where we went through these dips over the next couple of months, not only has mCloud recouped all of these losses, but it's now at an all-time high again, going back through early May. And we're now up meaningfully on the year as people realize that not only is this long-term trend permanent and real, but the pandemic is actually a net positive and a tailwind to accelerate this already massive trend.
Yeah, I mean, look how we're communicating right now and able to create content, and that's just one small usage of what the cloud is able to do. So, Byron, tell us what some of Bessemer's portfolio companies are in the cloud space.
Absolutely. We've invested in over 150 cloud companies to date and been part of over 24 IPOs. I think we have the largest portfolio in the space, but if I highlight just a few, and we'll start with a public one and talk about two late-stage private ones as well. Twilio on the public side is a company that we've been involved with now for over 10 years. This is a cloud communications platform, and it really enables businesses and developers to programmatically make and receive phone calls, text messages, email, all through APIs and a platform-based interface. As an example here, when businesses needed to move their call centers from on-prem to cloud-based, Twilio got several phone calls of businesses saying, look, I need to move over in days so that I can have a continuous business operation. I need my agents to be able to work from home. Can you help me? And Twilio's responded to that call, literally and figuratively in this case. On the private side, ServiceTitan is a great example of a vertical SaaS cloud business that's helping industries. In this case, they start with plumbing, HVAC, and electrical, and really they're the CRM system for these field operations. They run the business, internal operations, almost like the ERP system, and then they're the field operation engine where their techs are in the field looking at the handheld app on their phone, managing the house call, even placing orders back to the head office. And so they're expanding both by verticals and within those segments. And then the third company I'd mention is already a late stage growth company called Guild Education. And really what they're doing is unlocking the America's workforce through education. And it's a double bottom line business model that does well by doing good. But really they partner with Fortune 1000 leading companies to help them provide education as a benefit to their workforce. And companies like Walmart and Disney are now offering educational services for college degree completion and for advanced degrees as part of the benefits package for their standard employees. And that's another SaaS-like business model that's doing extremely well as companies are increasingly looking to differentiate themselves in this competitive job market.
Yeah, Byron, it's been really quite remarkable to see just how quickly cloud companies have been able to help their clients pivot so quickly, as you had mentioned, just in a matter of days. So looking on a higher level, what are the features of a cloud business model that help companies stay resilient during economic downturns?
So there's a natural alignment of incentives. When you have a service-based business model, you need to have a great product, and that carries the day over time. When businesses have reached scale, they have this reoccurring revenue dynamic. It's not like the old load and leave software where you'd sell a license, leave it on the doorstep and drive away, and a lot of those products were never implemented. It's the opposite in cloud computing. In the early days, it takes a while for the engine to get started because you get these monthly subscription deals or quarterly or in some cases annually, but you have now what become extended recurring revenue models that are immensely predictable. You have this long-term relationship with the customer, and you've got very typically then high renewal rates and low churn, such that often these businesses are running at net negative churn, meaning if they turned off sales and marketing entirely, they would still grow. And then you get cost leverage. What you essentially have is every single engineer working on the most current version of the product instead of trying to do ports and reverse compatibility with prior instances. So you get very high operational leverage out of your engineering team over time, which typically results in higher gross margins and ultimately higher free cash flow.
All right, Byron, to wrap up here, can you share any predictions for which cloud companies will be the most impacted and how?
Certainly. So we think on the positive side, a number of these businesses are getting favorable tailwinds as a result of those short and medium term trends we talked about. You see the numbers out of Amazon Web Services, Azure, GCP, certainly, DocuSign, Zoom, a number of those businesses that have been absolutely massively accelerated from this. There will be some that are SMB oriented or perhaps that are focused on certain industries like travel, transportation, hospitality, et cetera, that will have a slowdown. Trip actions, Concur type businesses, SMB oriented businesses, they'll certainly have short-term hits as the economy is disproportionately focusing the brunt of this recession on those sectors. But long-term, we each year publish a State of the Cloud report. We make several predictions for the future of cloud and segments that we think will drive this next horizon. And I'll give you three just to highlight. The first is the future of work being remote. This is a trend we focused on for about 18 months now. It's certainly been accelerated by COVID, but we think it will have permanent implications in a distributed global workforce. And cloud computing will be the glue and the technology to increasingly help enable that. The second is that the cloud will continue to proliferate around the globe. And this really speaks to the globalization of the cloud trend. We're starting to see this in Western Europe. We're starting to see this in China and India. And more we think that domestic businesses in the cloud space will emerge out of these regions and offer a lot of promise to also rival the US businesses that primarily lead the cloud index today. And then the third and final point I'll offer is the API universe will drive the innovation across all of these industries. There's an entire class of cloud businesses led by the Amazon Web Services, the Microsoft Azures, the Twilios, the Stripes, and others that are without a graphical interface or a very lightweight one. It's a machine-to-machine programming interface, an application programming interface, or an API that is the connection point. And often these businesses have millions or hundreds of thousands of customers that are building on top of them. That's one of the great gifts of the cloud industry. We believe we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg there in terms of great API businesses that will be the future public companies and will lead another horizon of this cloud revolution.
All right, Byron, excellent insight. Thanks so much for joining me on Trade Talks.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, and thanks for joining us. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.